We can get started now, I guess. And people joining in can, I suppose, try and catch up to where we're up to. That's all right. So, welcome all to Empower's latest Lunch and Learn webinar. I'm presenting this webinar on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Their traditions and cultural history enrich us all, yet Australia remains the only country in the Commonwealth lacking a treaty with our First Nations peoples. My name is Russell and I'll be presenting a pitch proposing posture is preposterous when pertaining to pain purposes. Now, before we really start, I'd like everyone to sit in what they would consider to be their ideal posture. Once you find it, keep it there. I also want you all to hold a pen up in your hand. Nothing fancy, I don't mind how you do it, but I just want you to try and keep it in the air for the duration of this talk. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. Today, we'll learn why posture has no relevance, specifically when treating spinal pains. We'll go over the whole history of the concept of good posture and review the research that led us to this up-to-date method of treatment that we can use to make clickbait levels of improvements to people's lives. I'll briefly touch on how equipment can support a client's postural needs where unavoidable, and please save all questions for the end. By the end of this, you'll understand why postural corrections should no longer be used in spinal pain treatments and be able to identify clients with spinal pains that would benefit from this updated type of allied health intervention. Spoiler alert, it's probably all of them. Quick self-plug, I've been a physio for 6 years with experience in aged care, home care and private practice settings. I was also a swimming teacher for 10 years before COVID forced me to toss it, but I'm proud to say that I made it to the great excuse for a cake milestone. I've found that having a decade of experience correcting movement and explaining things 1,000 different ways so that children can understand them has been quite valuable to my physio career. So what is good posture? Are you all still sitting with the ideal posture? How's it feel so far? Feeling positive, no doubt. Looking good with improved concentration, perfect for listening to a riveting presentation. And I wouldn't dare expect anyone to be feeling pain in this position now, would I? Posture is another story of civilization. The first known applications of posture were noted in a Dutch military drill handbook from the late 1590s, and it was the at-attention pose that garnered fame as the resting position. People thought, great, this must be the best position for restful standing, we'll take that. This idea lasted for over 200 years until eventually science took over. Through the 1800s, anatomists began searching for the center of gravity. They believed this would help them define the most efficient way of holding oneself and hence the perfect posture. At the same time, medicine began using postural corrections to treat physical and mental maladies. Several famous texts published around this time sold millions of copies worldwide, especially to the low and middle classes. They featured posture and standing up straight as key components, among other radical ideas. Posture's popularity exploded further in the 1900s. Best-selling books helped propel posture into mainstream society, which now viewed it as a key component to good health and etiquette. Clinicians that weren't addressing posture looked like pariahs. They couldn't afford to ignore it. Doctors, physios, eventually chiros, osteos, and naturopaths all jumped on board with more vigor to promote their own disciplines and maintain relevance. Even beauty pageants were based on posture to create and highlight its qualities. There were trophies and everything. However, it wasn't all glamour. Around the same period, the connotations around posture were simultaneously getting darker. Popular fiction authors played off societal norms when describing their monsters via their posture. Doctors would claim that poor posture was a dead giveaway for crooks, cowards, and layabouts. Wartime propaganda fed into all of this, depicting enemies as slouched, skulking, shadowy figures, contrasted to the brave, noble patriots looking bold and upstanding. At its worst, by 1922, posture had become a vehicle for classist and racist claims, with doctors debating each other over just how primitive and uncivilized various peoples were if they weren't standing up straight. And those discussions were published in one of the most well-known and respected medical journals of then and now. They were serious. Fast forward to 1967, where we get a glimmer of hope from physician and public health professor John Keeve, who pointed to an outstanding lack of scientific facts to say that poor posture will wreck a child's back. By then, generations had already gone through postural education programs embedded in schools, teaching them how to sit, stand, dress, behave, etc. How many of you were told to sit or stand up straight as a child by your parents? How many of their parents told them to do that first? This is how ingrained the idea of posture actually is. John Keeve blasted the schools for their complicity in this baseless practice. Unfortunately, 1 year later, a very thorough article was published in the official journal of the American Physical Therapy Association that sent us back to the 1800s again. It was a highly specific step-by-step guide to postural education for children that included pictures of pathological postures and exercises to correct them. Literally, the first line of the article states, "Good posture is important for proper functioning of the body and contributes to good appearance." In the entire 18 pages of the article, there was not a single reference to any actual research. None. I've seen BuzzFeed articles with more citations than this, and Science and Society have been deadlocked over the issue ever since. Fun fact, that's also the wrong way to stretch the hamstrings, but anyway. So what's the sitch? To this day, neither the general public nor health professionals can actually agree with certainty on what the ideal posture really looks like. Pretty much everyone thinks that posture is important when managing back pain, and there's vague agreement that it's better to be upright than not, but there is no consensus even among physios on what the optimal posture really is, especially when sitting. It begs the question, why are clinicians trying to correct postures if they can't agree on what that posture should even look like by the end? As we approach our present day knowledge, technically we've had solid evidence since 1985 that posture does nothing for back pain. One low quality study was all that could be mustered for the pro posture argument in the lead up to the new millennium. In 2010, there was strong, consistent evidence that there is no association between low back pain and awkward positions, while also noting that occupational sitting is unlikely to cause back pain on its own. Then, when looking for a more causal link between posture and back pain in 2020, researchers came to the consensus that there is an absence of any association between lumbar posture and pain, and you can take that to the bank. So, were you curious about necks at all? Turns out that increased forward head posture only has a weak correlation for causing neck pain in adults. And removing the low quality studies from that review also removes that correlation too. Under 18s and over 50s were completely safe. They did note that pain intensity correlated with forward head posture in over 18s, but the overall conclusion was that age is a more relevant factor for neck pain than the head position is. So it seems that posture isn't the key detail in neck pain or back pain. So what do we do with that information? Not all types of back pain are the same. Your clients with spinal pains don't all share the same experiences. They could feel better or worse one way or another. So what do we tell patients who are trying to sit in some silver bullet ideal posture? Well, according to history, those are your options. Research is catching up though. Studies are focusing less on posture and more on sitting time and sedentary activity overall instead. The idea that you can get pain from holding any posture for too long is becoming less controversial and more common sense as the years go by. Note that vigorous physical activity also helps a lot, but I'm not expecting the frail elderly to start doing high-intensity interval training anytime soon. By the way, who is still holding their posture and pen up? Who gave up already? Was it fatigue? Getting sore? Imagine trying to maintain some #perfect posture for hours on end when this brief period was already so difficult. Now we come to the main event.
Can I put my pen down?
No. In 2019, von Trefehl walked into a call center and said, "Hey, we're going to watch how you all sit and work and see what happens, back pain or not." So they took some initial measures, split the workers into groups based on pain, and tracked how much they moved and changed positions throughout the day, as well as how long they sat still for. The results, pretty charts. They look interesting, but as it happens, it's mostly insignificant nothing, except for this one key detail. People with pain spend almost 30% less time moving around during the day than their pain-free counterparts. And the trends on the other metrics all point towards more static behavior for people in pain. Now, whether pain was leading to stillness or the other way around was beyond the scope of this study, and static sitting is only one aspect of 24-hour sedentary behavior anyway. Hence, this next study, which did indeed find that a sedentary lifestyle is a considerable risk factor for back pain. Again, posture wasn't a factor, only the amount of time stuck in one position. They found some other correlations between sedentary behaviors and back pain too, but at the end of the day, the best answer to these sedentary risk factors currently seems to be move it. So if current evidence is suggesting that movement can help prevent the onset of back pain, can it be used to treat it as well? As a quick example of some things that do work, physios often use exercises based on the McKenzie method, Williams exercises, or even clinical Pilates, all of which exercise a patient in their direction and position of comfort. So let's dive further. Using the biggest study that's ever been done in the field of low back pain. It's big, it's fancy, it compared different treatments against one another to find which one was the best of the best, and found that you get the most improvements in pain and function from movement and directional based exercises. Postural corrections are irrelevant. But now it gets spicy. If the clinician gets a movement-based treatment wrong, the patient gets worse, almost immediately too. 1/3 of people that were intentionally given the wrong exercises immediately got worse and dropped out of this study. Note that those who got the directionally correct exercises improved in every metric. I'm talking pain intensity, how far it spreads, disability due to pain, medication use, degree of perceived recovery, depression, and work interference. It's crazy stuff. So raise hands if anyone's got any clients in mind already. It sounds like an infomercial at this point. Let's talk about Wendy. She was a 76-year-old lady living at home with her daughter, who was her primary carer, and her son-in-law. She was an avid walker, getting out for half an hour every day with no gait aid before a lengthy chest infection took away a lot of her fitness. By the time we started seeing her, she was already experiencing some functional decline, and she had just wanted to get her walking and balance back up to scratch. It came out that she was also starting to get a return of some old back pains, but we realized it was all stemming from her sitting down a lot more. She had become more sedentary. Her daughter had picked up a secondhand fall frame to try and help Wendy get moving again, but it was only making the pains worse instead. And that was partly because the physio hadn't measured it up for her yet, but anyway. Being helpful and loving, Wendy's family were increasingly running around doing things for her so that she didn't have to get up and walk with the pains, but turns out this had accelerated how bad it was actually feeling when she did finally stand up to walk. Sitting, on top of losing a lot of strength, was a key contributor to her back pains. So after we lifted the four-wall frame up to the correct height, it was instantly more comfortable for her to walk as she wasn't so hunched over. And the pain started decreasing within the sessions the longer we were standing up and moving. Turns out Wendy loved being upright. The biggest thing in her family that they had to realize, though, they had to stop helping so much. Wendy was getting up and moving for herself. Not only was it helping her get her strength back, but it was actually helping keep her back pain under control. Long story short, we got her back to walking 30 minutes every day with no pain, no frame. However, what happens if you have a patient that is unable to move? There are many conditions that can leave someone wheelchair bound. On average, these people will spend 10 hours of their day sitting in their chair, with a quarter of them getting increased pain soon after they get their new chair. These numbers can grow over time, suggesting a dire need to get everything perfect right from the start. This is where an occupational therapist is best suited to make a huge difference in someone's quality of life. As an example, 2/3 of power wheelchair users can get pain after 1 year. 70% of these people in pain resort to their own pain relief strategies, and 18% of that group tried using position changes where possible. This is where the ergonomics and positions of greatest efficiency actually come back into play. And occupational therapists are best suited to measuring and selecting equipment to support individual needs. Keep in mind that even the best, most offloading, perfectly measured ergonomic chair can still lead to muscle soreness and fatigue, but it will dramatically push back the time when those pains might appear. Think of the difference between holding that pen up in your hand with or without an armrest. Meet another Wendy. She's 84 years old and was a very active regular golfer until dementia took over. She lost all her postural control over a 5-year period and now uses a princess chair for 4 to 6 hours each day in her aged care facility. She uses a tilt and space wheelchair for outings, but look at these pictures here. Where we started from to where it has ended up. But despite having no mobility, she has no pain and doesn't need any pain medication. She doesn't need it. Her neck might look awfully concerning and is a prime example of someone who might be signed up for some postural corrections, but technically, there's no problems with it. And there hasn't been for years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Takeaway messages. If someone feels most comfortable sitting upright or slouching, let them. Having an ugly posture does not always represent a problem, let alone need fixing. Exercise programs based on comfort positions can yield excellent results and encourage movement above all else in all environments where safe to do so. So, for everyone here today, if you know of any clients that have spinal pains already and don't have any physiotherapy organised, that ought to change very quickly. If there are functional changes either on their own or at the same time as pain, do not delay. Musculoskeletal issues are currently the single biggest cost to the Australian healthcare system out of all disease groups. And doing more now means many savings later. Physios will also keep an eye out for risks of developing new pains and work to reduce those risks within the client's own home environment. Might as well also look out for clients that have received treatment involving a lot of postural corrections in the past and not really seen any improvements. So I'd recommend referring them to a different mob that are as up-to-date as you are now. Don't forget to use other allied health services such as OTs to help with all equipment needs. And I've seen several patients that have had both physios and OTs collaborating for the best outcomes. So it's never a case of one or the other. And those aren't the only allied health services that exist either. And in our case, Empower has all of these, plus nursing as well. Our multidisciplinary teams consist of pretty much the ones you see on the screen as well. And we have services spanning across multiple states, but you would have to check the service coverage maps online on the website for the specific availabilities in whatever region that you're looking for as well. So the referral forms and checklists are all on the website there if you want to use that page. And any questions? Thank you all for tuning in. Is there a Q&A box to type questions as well, or? Yes, maybe. So there should be a question and answer box, is there? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so if anyone's got anything that they want to throw out there or got any queries about specifically, yeah, don't hesitate to pop it in. Is anyone surprised by anything that they've heard of today? Is any of this new information or things that you might not have considered before? It's one of those things where it's not just applicable necessarily to an elderly or specific population, but it's pretty much universally useful information as well, which I thought was pretty good and hence worthwhile sharing with everyone today as well. So
April has put up a hand.
Yep. Is there a way for me to see the hands and everything? So we've got one question here from Renee. With nerve pain, should they continue to push through the pain? It's different for different people, and it depends on how that pain is actually occurring in the first place. And this is partly why the results from that other trial, where people who got the wrong exercises got worse almost instantly. Because if you do something that is triggering the pain instead, then yeah, it'll get dramatically worse. And in that case, you definitely want to respect the pain and not push it beyond that point. Usually in the way that I operate, I would say, okay, if there is a certain amount of pain from doing something, the test is whether or not that pain starts to move. So as long as it's sort of steady and it's manageable, like it's not spiking off too much, that is okay. But the moment it starts to increase or there are signs that it is getting worse, we stop it immediately and we try and do something else or keep things more comfortable and try and find a more subtle answer or just a more gentle option. Because it's all part of the assessment process that we'll do as well, test the movements, have a look at different things, try and figure out where the actual source of the pain is coming from and how best to deal with that. Thank you for that. Anyone else got any comments or questions?
What's one here, April? I'll just see.
Sorry, I was just going to comment because to speak about posture. I'm just in the age group of when, been told my whole life, stand up straight, sit up straight.
Sorry, April, I can't really hear it clearly coming through here. Is there a way to boost this or it might have to be typed, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry about that. Didn't really come through clearly on these speakers. Damn. So we can still answer questions in text after the meeting as well, perhaps.
Yeah.
So if there are any questions that trickle in after we've concluded here today, I'll stick around for a little bit longer and sort of go over those questions with you as well, if you like. Just don't be afraid to pop something in there as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. The next webinar that we've got as well, don't forget to sign up if you haven't already, is with our nutritional psychiatrist, and it will be discussing the relationship between food and mood.
It's actually a dietitian.
Oh, dietitian, yeah. And that'll be held on sometime in mid-August as well. On the 14th. Okay, on the 14th at 1 o'clock. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we've taken away something very interesting. New information to surprise people with at parties.